Welcome to this Sunday edition of Kruk and Kuip Extra Innings, NFL edition. Getting a little bit caught up on the off-season of Major League Baseball and today's 49ers game. You can follow me on Twitter and other social media. Well, today we have a new champion in Major League Baseball, and they are the Houston Astros. As for the first time in franchise history, they are World Series champions as they beat the Dodgers in 7 games. And now it's on to the offseason in Major League Baseball. In Giants news this week, the Giants hire a new pitching coach. His name is Kurt Young. Hired a former Oakland A's reliever. We will see how he does with his tactics. We'll see if Kurt Young is any good with analytics. And he was the pitching coach for the Oakland A's from 2004 to 2010, then for the Red Sox from 2011, and then was the former Oakland A's pitching coach. He was experienced and has worked with Rich Harden, Gio Gonzalez, Dan Herron, and former Giant Barry Zito and Bartolo Colon. But we shall see if he can help his priorities next year will be to fix Matt Moore's situation to avoid moving him to the bullpen. Jeff Samardzija get his home runs down next year. Cueto back. And we do have another announcement to make as in terms of Johnny Cueto. Johnny Cueto opted into his contract, so he'll be with the Giants till 2021 for $31 million for the next 4 years. So that plugs one spot in the rotation. Then he's also going to be nurturing the young arms and not to annoy Madison Bumgarner. And develop Chris Stratton next year, as I think Stratton will definitely be your number 5 guy. And we'll see where we go from there. But we'll see if he's any different from Dave Righetti or not. I'm kind of critical about it. Might be a little skeptical with the way Bobby Evans has ran the team the last few years. So certainly some things that need to be addressed. And then right now in the fall leagues, as we get into the final week of fall league, surprisingly, before we really start going into hot stove season. And as of right now, Steven Dugar has gotten a little better here in the last week or so. His batting average is up to 269 with 3 home runs. Aramis Garcia hitting at 250. Chris Shaw still struggling, so hopefully Shaw does a little better here in AAA Sacramento next year. Yohan Gregorio, ERA of 9. DJ Snelton, he certainly looked like a guy who's going to probably be on the spring training roster. Has been really good in fall league. Tyler Beatty settled down after a rocky first part of fall league, as fall league will conclude next week for the Scorpions. But we shall see what the Giants do now that the offseason is here with some of the outfield issues and stuff. And also, speaking of another hiring this week, Astros assistant Alonzo Powell will be the Giants' new hitting coach, so that's good news there. So I think that's certainly an upgrade at hitting coach. And Matt Herges is your bullpen coach. And then Nick Hundley is I don't know if Nick Hundley is going to return or not. And it looks like Justin Upton will return to the LA Angels next year, so that's going to help out the Angels next year. And then JD Martinez is now on the free agent market. Who will look for the same kind of contract as Justin Upton. Giancarlo Stanton would be interesting, but I don't want. But to me, I hope they don't pour all their money on Stanton, honestly. And then you got Lorenzo Cain, who might put them over the CBT. Billy Hamilton's another option, who's a good base stealer. But also, that I really think if the Giants were smart, they would truly be reluctant to go after somebody huge at the trade deadline to go huge in the offseason. That's going to push them over the CBT. I think they want to try to save their draft picks for next year. So I don't expect any big signings. You might see Howie Kendrick maybe in the outfield. Maybe Cameron Maben might be another good bargain bin option. But I think maybe just go to the bargain bin, try to luck out there next year, and then wait for Pence and Span to come off the books and go really big in the 2019 offseason. We'll see what movement we have next week as in terms of signings and stuff, but as we start now really entering the offseason next week. Also today in 49er news, the 49ers lose to the Arizona Cardinals 20-10. Really good game by C.J. Beathard, despite the fact that he was hanging on for dear life, but behind that awful O-line. But Beathard threw for over 300 yards despite being hit, being rushed all day by the awful offensive line of the Niners. Carlos Hyde, we'll get to him in a minute, 12 carries for 41 yards, and he was ejected for fighting in that game. And he will likely be getting a fine letter this week from the NFL. Probably somewhere around $30,000 for fighting. But Hyde was good as a receiver. 9 receptions, 84 yards. But the Niners were unable to stop Adrian Peterson today. 37 carries, 159 yards rushing. C.J. Beathard, 24 for 51, 294 yards. Passing, 1 interception. You really don't win too many football games when you're throwing the football more than 50 times a game. That is never a recipe for success in the NFL. And then Larry Fitzgerald, 5 receptions for 70 yards. As this might be the last time we see Larry Fitzgerald with the Cardinals, depending on what happens. And then Bradley Pinion, not a good day. But honestly, it was... Some people were talking about firing Pat Jersey 3000 says trash ass 49ers team, too bad because the Cowboys need competition this year. But this was just not good for the Niners, and this is not and the Niners did trade for Jimmy Garoppolo this week. I don't expect him to be playing until after the bye week as he tries to get accustomed to Kyle Shanahan's playbook at this moment. So we'll see what happens with that. And Shanahan, I don't think any quarterback right now would survive in that awful offensive line the 49ers have right now. They would be really lucky to have anybody survive. And C.J. Beathard, he actually did really well despite the circumstances of that awful offensive line. And there are people already calling for Kyle Shanahan's head, and they're still trying to rid a roster that was really damaged by Trent Baalke. And I think it's going to take another year of good drafting out of John Lynch before you really start seeing a difference. You might see, I think next year the Niners really need to honestly, they need to look at trading down in next year's draft, and really they need to fix that offensive line. It is just not good this year. The offensive line is terrible. They can't protect the QB, and if you think it's bad with Beathard, I think Garoppolo would get hurt in that Niner offensive line. They got to do what they can to protect Garoppolo if they want him to be the face of the franchise for the 49ers. And it only came at the price of a second-round draft pick. But that O-line is just such a mess. That's going to have to be the big priority in next year's draft in the end. And they can easily achieve that by trading down and getting multiple linemen and stuff. And just, we'll see what John Lynch does. I think the defense is on the right track. Maybe get a running back next year with Carlos Hyde likely to leave the Niners. But last thing we need is to hire another coach or whatnot after what happened the last couple of years. What we need is more continuity and give Shanahan another year to get some more of his guys in the system before we can actually give them a fair judgment. Let's go with the NFL wraparound for NFL Week 9. Now let's do one for about the fight. Then 3 players were ejected today in a fight in today's skirmish. Frosty Rucker, Hassan Reddick were ejected for the Arizona Cardinals, and Carlos Hyde. And former Niner Antoine Bethea with a stupid hit on C.J. Beathard. And that will likely be a fine, so we'll see what happens. I don't think that's going to be a suspension, but I do think Antoine Bethea is going to be fined for his actions in that game. I think certainly Rucker and Reddick will all get fines, and then so there's certainly going to be some fines coming from that skirmish. I don't expect any suspensions coming from that. And now to NFL wraparound for this week. The Redskins beat the Sea Chickens 17-14. The Cowshits beat the Chiefs 28-17. Now the Kansas City Chiefs have dropped 3 straight games. Could be a little bit of 2 straight games, excuse me. That was a little bit of a concern. The Panthers beat the Falcons 20-17. And the Colts beat the Houston Texans, who were without Deshaun Watson for the rest of the season, 20-14. And Tom Savage did not look good today throwing against the Colts. And it makes me wonder if it's maybe time for the Colts to the Texans to take a look at Colin Kaepernick. And in another game full of fisticuffs today, the Jaguars beat the Bengals 23-7. And there was a incident that I think is going to be worthy of a suspension with A.J. Green. A.J. Green grabbing a chokehold on Jalen Ramsey. And then threw punches. I certainly think that's got to be worthy of a multiple game suspension for A.J. Green. There's just no need for that in today's NFL. Then the Saints beat the Buccaneers 30-10. And if the Bucks Dirk Koetter, does he survive this week? This is going to be a good question. Dirk Koetter's seat is getting really hot over there in Tampa Bay, and his mismanagement of Jameis Winston is going to cost him his job at some point. I really think we should have not seen Jameis Winston playing last few weeks. Winston is not 100%. And no, I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick's any world beater. But you can't keep throwing a struggling Jameis Winston out there to try to win games for you. Next week, they got to make the switch to Ryan Fitzpatrick, and that might mean signing a quarterback if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next week. And the LA Rams clobber the New York Giants this week, 51-17. And the Philadelphia Eagles trounced the Denver Broncos 51-23. And Denver, they got to hope that Paxton Lynch will be ready to go. That at this point, their only hope at quarterback is going to be Paxton Lynch, with both Semi and Osweiler not getting the job done. And I wouldn't totally be surprised at this point if Vance Joseph goes one and done in Denver. I think after this game, Vance Joseph has to be on the hot seat in Denver. The Titans beat the Ravens 23-20. And the Thursday night game, the Jets beat the Bills 34-21. Next week, the 49ers will play the New York Giants. So there's another good opportunity for the Niners to get their first win. And the New York Giants have had a lot of defensive issues of their own. So that might be a really good game for C.J. Beathard. And maybe it gives the defense a little bit of a breather, hopefully. But this has got to be the best chance for the 49ers to get a win next week. I will be back next Sunday. Keep it red, keep it gold. Go Niners.